Hi, I should be live now. Sorry, I'm running just a little bit late. Dean was distracting me. He keeps wanting to play. But hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy Saturday. Today we're doing the anti-relationship year live show. I see we already have some people here in the chat. I know there's like a little bit of a lull between StreamYard and YouTube, so we'll give it a minute. Hey, Deli. Hey, Emma. Thanks so much for being here, guys. That would be cool if we had like more of a hangout where I could see you guys as well. I'm here. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for being here. Thank you. Can you read YouTube chats? Yeah, the chat does show up on here, and sometimes it takes like a really long time to show up for me, so I also have YouTube open on my phone. So hopefully I can see everything. Hi, welcome. It's going well for me. How are you guys doing today? What have you been up to? Hopefully you can't see the mess behind me. I've been building a shoe rack, and I'm only halfway done. It's been taking me all morning. Where are you guys from? What time is it for you right now? I'm always interested. We always have people coming in from like all over the place. Yeah, maybe we could do something on Zoom or something. I'm one of the few people with like everything that went on with the pandemic. I don't think I've ever used Zoom before. Like I don't know how it works, but I could probably figure it out. I guess I lucked out. I was out of school by the time all of this happened. But yeah, in case you didn't see the title or the description, there's definitely going to be a ton of spoilers in today's chat. So if you haven't read the book, maybe come back and watch the replay once you're done. I don't want to spoil you. I think the reveals and how everything comes together is a pretty big part of the experience with the book, and I would hate to spoil that for you. Oh, you're from India. That's so cool. Austria. See, we always have such an interesting mix of places. Denmark, 9 in the evening. Ohio, Canada. I figured maybe like midway through the day and Saturday would be a safe bet. It would either be morning or night for people. But welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Yeah, it's so weird. The chat comes up so much faster on my phone than it does over here. Lots of Canada people. Very interesting. The UK. This is so exciting. Thanks for being here, guys. New York. Perfect timing. I'm glad it was good timing. So yeah, I figured I will let you guys run the show pretty much. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions, anything in particular you want to talk about. I did come up with some questions that I want to ask you guys if we have any lulls. But other than that, I'm here to talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. From Tennessee. Interesting. Thanks so much for being here. I know I keep saying that, but I'm so excited. I didn't know if other people were going to show up for this. It's been less than a month since the book came out, so I know I didn't give you a ton of time to read it, but I'm glad we got some people. Speaking of people reading it, though, you guys have been super fast. I think we have over 100 reviews on Goodreads now and like 29 or something on Amazon, so you guys are fast. Thank you. The twist and Terry really took me by surprise. They were so good. I'm so glad you thought so. That was actually one of my questions. Like, what were you the most surprised by, or did you see anything coming? I didn't know if it was going to be too obvious, so I'm glad to know they took you by surprise. Finished the book on Thursday evening. Inspiration from Miller's character. Oh, okay, we got some questions now. Miller's character. I'm sure we'll have lots of things to talk about with Miller. The most common question I get with him is if he's based off of anyone in my real life, and he's not. None of the characters are. I just don't really base characters that way, but I don't really know where Miller's character came from. I kind of like the dynamic between Miller and Joe because I feel like Miller is to Joe as a friend what Joe is to Meredith as a friend, if that makes sense. Like, Miller acts as Joe for Joe. Does that make any sense? So I just felt like it was an interesting dynamic between the two of them. But yeah, I just really wanted to write something healthy. And there's so many, like, you know, the enemies to lovers and the bad boys, toxic kind of relationships and romance that are super popular. And if that's your thing, that's great. But I just wanted something that was like respectful and wholesome and healthy. And so that was kind of what I was going for. And that's kind of what shaped Miller's character overall. Arizona. Okay, now all the comments are coming in at once. I'm trying to keep up. What inspires you to write Gray? Gray. Again, Gray's not based off of anyone in particular, but I think everyone has, not everyone, but a lot of people have some kind of Gray in their life. So Gray is kind of a mixture of a lot of people I have known through my life. I love your vlogs. You give me so much inspiration. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you enjoy watching them. They're definitely fun for me to make. I finished it last night at 2 in the morning. So you squeezed in right under the wire. I'm glad you could finish it. You wrote the story of my life. I also dated a guy in a band who wrote a song about me, released it, and I left him to be with the rest. Oh my god, that's insane. That's so funny. You are like exactly what happened in the book. That's so funny. I'm sorry that he wrote a song about you. I hope it wasn't as bad as Joe's song. How was it for you to develop Joe's character? Joe is interesting for sure. I think my favorite part about writing the whole book was seeing the difference between her in the 2 different timelines. And so this was one of the few books that I really didn't outline pretty much at all. I just kind of went where the story took me, which is why I think it came out very character driven. So Joe kind of developed on her own and I just followed her along. So it was really fun. It was really interesting. From Mexico. I loved the audiobook. I just couldn't stop listening. I'm glad you liked the audiobook. I really enjoyed listening to it too. I think the narrator did a really good job. Was the amazing banter intentional when you wrote the book, or did it just come spontaneously? Joe and I definitely have the same sense of humor. Like that is my sense of humor to a T. So it just came as I wrote. It wasn't like an effort to write that way. But I'm glad that you liked it. I was obsessed with all the cute details between Miller and Joe, like their mutual obsession with scary movies. That also came from me. I guess there's like a lot of little details of mine that I gave to characters. Like I love scary movies, so. And French fries, that's also me. What was your favorite scene to write? I'd be interested to know in the chat, what was your favorite scene to read? Let me refresh my memory. I feel like I like writing different kinds of scenes for different reasons. Like some of the harder, like more hard-hitting scenes are just satisfying as a writer to write. But also, I mean, the one scene that I showed as a sneak peek before the book came out that I sent out in my newsletter of Joe being drunk and having that phone conversation with Miller, like that is just, that makes me laugh every time I read it. So that was really fun to write. Trying to think of any other ones that were particularly memorable. I think that's probably my favorite. Or maybe the bad hookup scene with Jordan in one of the first chapters that also makes me laugh. That was pretty funny. Oh, that's totally fine. I'll definitely have this up on the channel afterwards so you can watch after the fact if you can't make it right now. Or the book in one day when it finally arrived and it's already a different favorite of mine. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. What is your favorite book that I've written? Of my novels, this one is my favorite. Of like the published books, all 4 of my books, my favorite is Poems for the End of the World. But the book that I'm working on right now, The Marionettes, I like more than I like The Anti-Relationship here. So hopefully that'll be my trend, as I like each book that I write more than the last one, because I hope they get better each time. But yeah, this is my favorite of the published, but the next ones you guys will get, I like even more. The whole Christmas break was my favorite scene. I'm so glad you liked that, because that almost wasn't in the book. That was a very, very last minute addition. And that was a suggestion from one of my beta readers, because I had the little detail about the earrings that he gave her. And it was just like a little comment like, oh yeah, he gave me those for our first Christmas together. And one of my beta readers was like, I need to see this scene. I was like, okay, we could do that. What was the little hint that you said that you wrote in the book? But what you said we all seem to miss. It wasn't like a little hint. It was just, hold on, let me read the other comments. We'll get back to this. We'll get back to this. My favorite scene to read was after the liquor store and Miller showed up at her apartment in the rain. That was one of the first scenes that I saw in my head when I started writing this book. So I knew we were going to get to that scene. Most of the other stuff before that I didn't know about until I got to them, but that one scene I had planned out from the beginning. Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. That was a challenge with this book, writing any of the, I don't even want to call them like steamy scenes because I don't think the book is that steamy, but any of the sex scenes was new to me. Obviously, there weren't any of those in book one, so it was interesting writing them for the first time, and I was like, I'm perfectly okay and comfortable reading pretty steamy books, but am I comfortable writing that level of steam? So I had to like play around with those scenes a lot to figure out what I was actually comfortable writing. This might not sound like a compliment, but your book put me like writing something. I have a book hangover. That's like the highest form of a compliment because that only ever happens with my like favorite book. So thank you. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. What was the hardest scene in Joe's story to write? Oh, it's hard. I mean, like the more emotional scenes, I always like, it's a weird feeling because I feel bad for the character, but I'm also like, aha, like I think this will hit like readers' hearts. So I enjoy as a writer writing it. So like the scene in the bathroom where she's like crying on the floor, I felt so bad for her. So that was a really sad scene to write. But other than that, like just like technically speaking, the harder scenes for me are like writing the winter ball, and there's like so much going on and there's so many people on the page and there's so many characters and there's just so much to describe, and finding like a good balance of that's hard for me to write without it just coming across as like all of this description and all of these dialogue tags because you have to keep track of who's talking because there's so many people in one scene. So that scene was hard for me to write. I'm getting lost in the comments. Okay, where were we? My favorite is the one at Joe's photos presentation. I screamed when Miller went to her parents and kissed Joe. That was one of the other few scenes that I definitely had planned out early on. I knew that scene was going to happen. Yeah, we can definitely talk about the marionettes a little bit later. Remind me, we'll talk about that near the end. I'm so glad that you liked them. Yeah, I felt like they were a good like middle ground. Like you get a little bit of detail, but hopefully not enough to like scare off people who don't enjoy reading that. I'm currently still reading this book, but I'm fully prepared to be spoiled because I want to experience this chat live. Thanks so much for being here. How far are you into the book? Also, totally random, I've recognized your picture because I know you've commented on my videos before, and for some reason, I never knew that you had a channel too. It took me so long to realize that, but I've been really enjoying your writing vlogs lately. So sorry it took me so long to realize you also had a channel. Gracie, yeah, she was unplanned in this book. She just kind of like showed up in a scene and then demanded to be in the rest of the book. So she kind of came out of nowhere. I don't know if I'm ever going to write something else with these characters in this world, but if I ever were to, it would probably be something about Gracie. I really liked writing her. I'm glad you guys thought so too. I thought it fit well with like the tone of the book without going too much into it, you know? I cried with her. It was so painful, and the way Miller took care of her had me crying harder. I'm glad someone else cried while reading the book. The only part of the book that I cried while writing it was weirdly enough the epilogue. The epilogues are what gets me. Oh my gosh, it's 5:15 in the morning for you. Thank you so much for being here anyway. I was super uncomfortable writing sex scenes at the beginning of my writing journal. Now that's all I want to write. Yeah. Now I'm more comfortable writing it. You'll see in like the marionettes and future books, it goes a little further than this first book did. I say first book because this is the first book that had anything of the sort in it. The first book, The Anti-Virginity Pact, is very mild. So now that I've kind of figured out my sweet spot and like what I'm comfortable writing, it's a lot easier. But it was like, I had no idea. I was like, am I even going to be able to write this? I don't know. Okay, I skipped a few comments. I'm going to go back to those. Where was this comment? Oh, here it is. Okay. So the thing that, I don't know if anyone missed this per se, but just like seeing reviews and stuff and people wishing they knew more about Miller, there was like a lot of his backstory and things about his personality that it's like in the book if you read between the lines, but it's not really a focus. And so I went back and forth with myself on like how much I wanted to include in the book, because there's always this balance of like, you do all of this development as the writer and you know all of these backstories and stuff, but all of that doesn't belong in the book, because then it just comes across as like info dumpy and the reader doesn't need to know all of the information. So there was just stuff with like Miller's backstory and his personality that I think could have been a little just more on the page directly. So like you learn about his father being abusive and violent and ending up in prison, and his mom has the restraining order against him. So then you can kind of see just in the way that Miller turned out, he goes to therapy, he's really into boxing. Like these are the ways that he controls his own like anger issues, because he doesn't want to end up like his dad. And then you see these little moments in the book where he kind of loses control and that really rattles him, like punching Jordan at the party and then his hands are like shaking and he's like more upset that he lost control. So like I wish I'd gone into that a little bit more. But that's pretty much it. Oh, sorry, the comments are like loading in big batches, so I keep losing my spot. Oh, here we go. Okay. When you wrote the book, was there a point when you had something in mind, but a character was arguing with you in your head on where the story should go? Trying to think back to like actually writing the rough draft. It's been a little while. I don't think that happened this go around, but I've definitely hit points with other books where I thought it was going to go one way, and then my characters took the wheel and we ended up going a different direction. That didn't really happen with this book. Thankfully, this book was just easy to write, honestly. This book didn't actually change very much from the rough draft. The rough draft was like 50,000 words, and I ended up adding about 20,000 words to it. So I think there was only, I was looking back at the rough draft the other day because I was just curious. I think I only cut one scene from the rough draft. Everything else, like I tweaked stuff, but everything else is still in here, and I really just added a ton of chapters. And even the one scene that I cut, I ended up combining with another scene that was already there. So nothing really left this book. Everything was just adding to it. How long have you been writing? Honestly, since I was able to. One of my first memories is like writing a book in first grade and reading it in front of my class, very embarrassingly. So pretty much my whole life. Any tips on becoming a better writer? 100% just practice. It's the number one best thing you could do. You can, hear advice and read craft books and do all of that, and that's great too, but the best thing that you can do is practice and then get some feedback on your writing from like beta readers, friends, that kind of thing. I'm on chapter 15, the boxing scene. Oh, I think that one was a last minute addition too, actually. So you're like halfway through. Very cool. Miller's story would have been amazing to read, but I feel you gave us enough to understand why he is the way he is. I'm glad that it seems that way, for sure. He was a fun character to write. You should do more book recommendations. The problem is I haven't been reading, so I don't have any new recommendations other than like the last videos that I've made. With editing clients and with writing my own books, I honestly only read like one book a month, and it's usually my book club book for Patreon, and that's like all I've been reading. I think I've only read like 6 books so far this year. So unfortunately, I don't have any new recommendations because I haven't read anything new. Okay, I think I'm caught up with the comments unless this is just taking like a really long time to load. So, unless you guys have any more questions or if there's like anything in particular you want to talk about, let me know. I did write some questions down here as well. Oh, now comments are loading. I love the writing aspect of your channel. I'm glad you do. I've found I kind of pivoted. I started off mainly making videos about reading and books because that was a bigger part of my life for a while. When I was in college, I wasn't writing very much because I had so much writing to do for class I didn't want to write. And now I have so much reading to do for work that I don't want to read, and now I write more. So we've just had to adapt. I have such a difficult time outlining. I feel like whenever I try to outline a few chapters ahead, the chapters always seem to go a different direction than what I had originally planned. I also have that happen. I make very loose outlines and just know in the back of my mind, it's likely this will change. I can't remember what writer described it this way, but the best thing that I've ever heard for like my kind of process of writing is like the headlights metaphor, how you're in a car and you can only see as far ahead of you as the headlights. So I'll outline like 3 or 4 chapters. And then once I get to the end of those, then I can outline the next set of chapters, but I can only ever see what's like directly in front of me. I can't see the whole picture until I've written the whole rough draft. I like that you didn't make Gray an entirely whole character. It was not black and white. He was really genuinely nice at some points. Was that hard to do, to write him as a complex character? Yeah, if you were to read the rough draft, all of the nice guy stuff was not in it. I had to go back and add that. Because I was reading through the rough draft the first time and I was like, why does Jo even like him? There's nothing good about this guy. So I had to go back in and try to show why she would like him in the first place. So a lot of those scenes were additions in later drafts, like the scene where he helps Kaylee pick out a dress was added on later, him going for a drive with Jo, like all of those like nice moments with him I had to add later. Did you have to do any research to write certain things in the book, like with photography or boxing? I did a little bit. Sorry, I like have something in my eye. But I did actually take photography classes in college, a few of them. So I had like basic knowledge, and I have some basic knowledge of cameras just from YouTube. But I did like do a little bit of research for anything I didn't know. And then boxing, another thing that I gave to my characters, that's what I used to do in college. I used to go to boxing classes all the time. I love boxing. So I'm not an expert, of course, but I kind of just went off of what knowledge I had. The book you were reading on editing, do you recommend it? I'm still reading it. I don't know where it is. It's around here somewhere. I haven't read enough of it yet to recommend it or not. I don't know, but so far it seems promising. I honestly haven't picked it up in a little while. Sam and Miller, the tape of guys. I love them so much. I'm glad that you liked them. That's really funny. I really liked that Jo went through with the internship since it's something she really wanted before knowing whose mom it was. That she'd been worshiping forever. Yeah, that was definitely, I think, an important distinction for past timeline Jo and present timeline Jo, because I feel like freshman year Jo wouldn't have done it, but senior year Jo did. Do you have to write and read a lot while getting a writing degree, or is the reading just limited to the syllabus? It was so much writing and reading. At least in my program, we had a lot of assigned text to read, but then you're also constantly giving feedback to everyone else in your class if you're in like a workshop kind of class. So I was reading and critiquing at least 2 students' work every single class, and then having to write them like an editorial letter, basically, my suggestions for improvement. And then you have to write your own stuff. So it was constant reading and writing for me, at least. As a reader, do you prefer a bad boy, like almost a bully, or someone who's bad for the world and good for our character? If you asked me when I was younger, I would have like preferred the like bad boy stuff. Now that I've gotten older, I don't tolerate that kind of stuff a lot now. But it also, I feel like, depends on the genre. If it's like a contemporary, like college setting, I have less tolerance for the like bully bad boy characters. But for whatever reason, if it's like a fantasy setting, I'm more okay with it. So it depends. Like, I'm trying to think of any examples. Like The Cruel Prince, I feel like is a popular example. It's more of like a bully enemies to lovers kind of thing, and I really liked that series. But I know bully romances are really big, especially in indie publishing right now. Um, I don't really mesh with that subgenre personally. What did you do to make sure the abortion pill taking scene seemed genuine? Did you research the topic? Did you have a friend who had that happen? No, I didn't have any friends who had that happen. That was one of the things that I did a lot of research on. And then I was talking with one of my beta readers who's actually from the state that this was set in. And I was like asking her about if she knew anything about like the laws and stuff, because it's different place to place. So that was one of the things I did research into. How was it writing the dual timeline? I really liked when I would read one chapter in one timeline and then things are explained in the first timeline by the other timeline. That was kind of my goal. Yeah, it worked out really well that way. I ended up actually writing pretty much all of one timeline first and then writing all of the second timeline. I started off trying to alternate and it just got too confusing for me. So I wrote pretty much the entire then timeline first. So I kind of figured out, what happened and everybody's backstories and stuff. And then I went back and I wrote the now timeline. So that helped a lot. And then I could look directly and be like, okay, this is the chapter that's going to come before this. How can I make these two relate to each other? I think those are all of our comments. I can never tell if it's just taking too long to update. But yeah, I would love to hear in the comments. These are my questions for you guys. I would love to know who your favorite or your least favorite characters are. And then we kind of already went over this, but if you have any favorite scenes, I would love to know. Anything that surprised you or you didn't see coming? And then how did you read it? Did you read the ebook, the paperback, the audiobook? I would love to know. Great, I really like the dual timeline because they work so well together, but that we're distinct enough to appreciate individually, if that makes sense. I'm glad you guys liked it. I feel like those are hit or miss with me when I'm reading them. Sometimes I get confused on like which timeline I'm reading, or I like one more than the other, so then it's like boring when you get stuck in the other timeline. So were there multiple versions for Miller and Joe making a move on each other? I don't think so. I think everything has happened the way that it happened pretty much since the rough draft that I can think of. I don't think anything really changed. As soon as Grace led into the chair next to Joe at the bar, I was like, Taylor Swift, I knew you were trouble. That would be, I should have added that song to the playlist. That's a very good fit. Even when Gray was being kind of sweet, I already knew he was going to let me down, so I hated him from the start. Yeah, same. That's why it was hard for me to make him like semi-likable, and I had to go back and add the good scenes of him because I hated him even when I first started writing him. Have you ever had doubts about being a writer? I seem to get stuck in ruts with my confidence in my writing that's really hard to pull out of. For sure, for sure. I'm really lucky that I have very supportive parents and a very supportive family. They're the ones actually who pushed me to major in creative writing in college. I almost did the pre-law track, which is where Miller gets that from. I thought about doing like a million other majors because I felt like creative writing wasn't a secure career path. So I definitely doubted myself the most when I was going through college. I mean, I kind of forgot the time. That's okay. I just finished the ebook. I was shocked by Kaylee. I thought she would stay a good friend for a bit longer. Miller and Joe are faves, but I also love Gracie. I agree. I think, yeah, surprisingly, you'd think that Gray would be like my least favorite character in the book. My least favorite character is Kaylee, actually. I read the paperback and was super surprised about the pregnancy, honestly. Yeah, that was one of the few things that I knew about the book going in was going to happen. Like I said, I didn't really outline this one, so I just had like a couple of little like breadcrumbs that I knew was going to happen. And for some reason, when I first started brainstorming this book, that was like the first thing that I knew was going to happen. I despised Addie Liv. Kaylee was just sad and disappointing, so heartbreaking when she realizes she's not her friend. That may have been one of the hardest scenes for me to write, honestly, when Jo is just like realizing none of her friends are like actually her friends. I felt so bad for her. I hated the girls who betrayed Jo. Her friends from freshman year. I felt sad about Kaylee, though. Her betrayal shocked me. Yeah. I don't know if you guys are on TikTok. I like make all of these TikTok references and people look at me like, what? That sound where the guy's like, fake ass bitches. That's what I think about. I have 25% left of the book, so I'm just popping in to say I'm loving it. I'm so glad you're enjoying it. Thank you so much for reading. One of my favorite scenes was when we get to see how Jo was feared by her peers. I love that she was confident, determined, and ambitious. Yeah, Jo is definitely the kind of person that I feel like would intimidate me when I like first meet her. But she's also very similar to basically all of my best friends I've had throughout my life. Like, she's the kind of person I've always been friends with. So that's kind of where her personality comes from. I read the ebook from iBooks, and I really, really want the paperback version. I loved Jo and her love of fries. My heart is really... Me too, man. I love my French fries. Bought the ebook because I couldn't wait, but I have the hard copy now too. Thank you so much for getting both. I really appreciate that. I kind of turned it the same way. I start with the ebook while I wait for paperbacks to get to me because I'm too impatient. Sorry, I'm seeing the comments are coming up on my phone, but they're not coming up on my screen for some reason. I also love how you wrote an entire song for the book. How was that? Was that easy, hard? Where did the inspiration come from? That's a good question. I don't really know. The good thing is I feel like writing songs and writing poetry aren't that different, so it wasn't that hard. It was really funny, actually, when my audiobook narrator was narrating the book. When she got to that part, she emailed me and she was like, how do you want me to do this? Do you want me to sing it? Do you want me to just like speak the lyrics? And when I read those lyrics, like I have the melody perfectly in my head. So she first tried to sing it and it was just so different from what I had pictured in my head that I was like, you can just read it. It's okay. Because there was no way she was going to get it exactly the way that I was picturing it. I don't really know where it came from. I just kind of like heard it in my head perfectly. I just liked playing with the syllables of it. So it just kind of popped up. I read the ebook. I love the writing at the end of chapter 11 and beginning of chapter 12. I have almost that whole section highlighted because the writing was so amazing. What chapter was that? But thank you. I'm really glad that you liked it. End of chapter 11. Ah, the Swedish fish. Glad that you liked it, though. When I was reading The Anti-Virginity Pact, I was cackling because Jo is like my best friend. Yeah, that's definitely where Jo's personality comes from. She's very similar to a lot of my friends. Wasn't expecting when Jo found out that Kaylee knew about it all along. Yeah. One of my favorite moments was when Miller was supportive in the very beginning. Their friendship just makes me so happy. Yeah, I love how that was actually one of my favorite things also about the book was watching Miller's character develop. I feel like he's so awkward and like shy his freshman year, and then you really see him get more confident and come more into himself in his later timeline. So seeing their like awkward little friendship in the beginning, it just makes me smile. I loved the band name United Fates. Oh, I can't take credit for that one. My friend Paige actually came up with the band name. I Snapchatted her when I like first wrote the book and I was like, I need a band name. Can you come up with something? And that was the first thing that she came up with and it fit. I read it in one day and was sad to be done with it. Thank you so much. I mean, I'm sorry that you were sad, but I'm glad that you liked it that much. I'm glad you liked the band name. Yeah. I thought it was fun. That was another thing, actually, with the names. Most of the names in the book I didn't even come up with because you guys were so involved in this process with like our writing sprints, and I put one of those questions boxes on Instagram, and I was like, I'm writing a book. I know I'm going to need a lot of names. Give me all of your recommendations. So I'd say like 90% of the character names in this book came from you guys. I only named like a few of them. Are you still planning to write an epilogue for us? I think I'm not alone when I say we would love that. I would love it too. I definitely wouldn't say it's out of the question. I just don't know when I'll do that. My mind is like so sucked into my marionettes books right now and that world and those characters. So I feel like I need to finish the book that I'm writing for this series and then like re-immerse myself in this story so I'm in the right headspace before I would write something like that again. What would you have considered the sexual assault in the book? So one of my readers actually reached out to me and suggested that I add that to the trigger warnings, which was really smart. I didn't really think about that. I didn't know there was a specific word for it, but it's kind of implied that when Jo is hooking up with Gray, she is under the impression that they're using a condom, but they're not. So I think the technical word is stealthing or something like that, and it's considered a kind of sexual assault. Now it's going to bother me that I can't remember what the right word is. Yeah, it is called stealthing. I didn't know there was a word for it. You guys teach me new stuff every day. So I really appreciate when people like slide into my DMs and suggest more triggers and stuff, because I try to make as thorough of a list as I can, but there's always things that I just forget about. So it's really helpful when you guys point stuff out to me. Oh yeah, you're here. Thank you so much for letting me know. Yeah. It was when she was lying there after the Swedish fish scene, processing everything that happened, and then the description in the beginning of chapter 12 in the water, pounding on the windshield. I'm glad you liked that part. Yeah, thanks for being here, guys. We've already been here for almost 40 minutes. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Any other questions you have? Oh yeah, since you guys have all obviously read the book, or at least read some of it, did you read the first book as well? And then did you read them in order? Did you read them out of order? How do you think that impacted your experience? I would just be super curious because everyone's always asking me, what order should I read them in? Do I have to read them both? So just from a reader's perspective, did you read the first book first? Do you feel like it made you enjoy it more? Or did you just read the second one and feel like you weren't missing out? I would just be curious to know. I feel like you could just read the second book and not feel like you're missing anything, but that might just be me. Oh, and Jo drunkenly kissing Miller really surprised me. His reaction and how he deals with it afterwards was everything. Yeah, that was one of my favorite scenes to write. Love that top you wear. Thank you. I got it from just like a little small business that I found on TikTok. I've been trying to be better about supporting small businesses, and I saw her little boutique pop up. I read the Anti-Virginity Pact earlier this year. I loved it. I need a book on Harper senior year. That seems to be the consensus when people want other books in the series. They want a Harper book and a Gracie book. I feel like if I were to ever write something else, it would be about one of them. I just don't have a story in mind for either of them. I read the first, but right when it came out, so it's been a while and I don't remember all the details. It hasn't affected this book at all. I'm glad to hear it. That's kind of what I thought. I have both books, but I've only read the second so far. I enjoyed it without knowing what was in the first book. Good to know. I'll be interested to see what you think of the first book then, going back to it after having already read the second book. I did read the Anti-Virginity Pact first, and I definitely enjoyed the Mirror Easter eggs, but you could have read one or the other. Yeah. For a video I did on reading Booktuber's books and loved it. I'm only partway through Terry, but I'm enjoying it as well. Thank you so much for reading both of them. Sorry we're spoiling you on the new book, but I appreciate it. I read them in order, and the Mayor Mentions made me so happy, and I don't think it impacted my experience. Good to know. That was another thing. I wasn't sure how much of Meredith I wanted to include in this book, and I definitely didn't want to include anything that would be spoilery from the second book, or from the first book. So if you hadn't read the first book, you see that Meredith pops up, but you don't get any spoilers about what happened in her book. I read the Anti-Virginity Pact first, and definitely a lot different to Terry. I think Jo comes across a lot better in Terry. So do I. I also just think she's different in the book because she's grown up a lot. Like, she's just very young and immature in the first book. I don't think the order makes a difference. Good to know. That's what I thought too. So I'm glad that you guys agree. Oh, don't even worry about it. I do too. I forget about books. Within like a week of reading them, I could no longer tell you the main character's name. Like, I just don't remember anymore. Oh, well, I hope you can find it. How was it writing the scene where Gray performs at the school? I really felt with Joe. I want to just smack him. You mean the ball thing? Yeah, it was actually kind of a fun chapter to write, or that scene. That chapter overall was difficult to write, that we kind of talked about before, but that actual scene of her seeing him again was kind of fun. I don't know. I like Joe's dialogue in those kind of scenes. I like writing that part. She's been redeemed in my eyes. I'm glad you feel that way. I really like Jo as a character, and I understood why people didn't like her in the first book, but it still hurt. Came out and did not influence my reading experience, but the second book, they were very different. Yeah, I feel like they're very different for a lot of different reasons, but this one is definitely more romance-centered, and that one was more coming of age. I'm glad you thought so. Oh my gosh, I just like popped open this cap. Yeah, I definitely, looking back, can see a huge difference between the two books as well. Especially considering, even though I rewrote that book when I was 21 or 22, it's still a book that I originally wrote when I was 17. So I see a big difference in the books. I'm glad you enjoyed that part. Yeah, I think seeing her growth is one of the most fun parts. Do you have a lot more TikToks than what you post on Instagram? Yeah, I've been posting TikToks a lot lately. Yeah, Instagram, for whatever reason, their reels, it's just like less user-friendly in my experience. And then they also have a shorter time limit. So any of my longer TikToks get cut off if I try to put them on Instagram. So I keep forgetting to transfer them over. So I definitely have a lot more that I could put over there. But being vegan, how do you deal with your characters' diets? I find myself avoiding the topic, but you had them eat meat. So is that just not a problem for you? It's definitely something that crosses my mind. And I kind of have to separate myself from the book, because if it were up to me, I would just make every character I ever write vegan. But that's just like not realistic for my characters. So I just have to kind of separate myself from that more. But it's definitely like, I like stop myself for a second. I'm like, I struggle with it a little bit. It's definitely a problem. So I know what you mean. I think those are all of our questions. I'll give it a few minutes or a few seconds to load, but I think that's everything. I did want to announce in this live, just kind of as a thank you guys, because you guys were the first to read the book, and for being here and for staying for the whole thing. If you've been waiting on the signed copies for this book, I just put them up on my website. So if you go to the shop on my website, I also have it linked down below in the description. You can grab a signed copy now if you want. I don't know how, because I haven't announced it yet. Within an hour of me putting them up, someone found them and went and bought a book. So I currently have 8 left. If you want to get a signed copy of The Anti-Relationship Year, there's also 2 copies of the new cover for the Anti-Virginity Pact. I think that's all. I still have the old cover, and I still have all my poetry collections. If you also want to get a poetry collection, if you use the code NATIONAL in all caps, you get a discount on the poetry books because it's National Poetry Month. But yeah, if you're waiting for the signed books, they are up now. So I'm going to send it out in my newsletter on Monday. So you have until then to grab a copy if you want one, because otherwise I think they're going to sell out pretty fast after I send out that newsletter. Can you do a condo tour? It's a mess right now, but maybe in the future. I have one up on my, I don't know which channel it's on. It was in Vlogmas of last year or the year before last year. Like not this most recent December, the December before that, when I moved in here, that I did like an empty tour of it. Oh wait, that's not what I meant to click on. Do you have an update on getting the book on Book Depository? Yes. So I basically have like created an account and uploaded it through this different distributor. So that's all taken care of. Now I just have to wait for Book Depository to put it up there. So everything's set up for it to happen. Book Depository just has a long processing time. They say it can take up to 8 weeks. So if it's still not there in 8 weeks, I'll reach out to their customer service and be like, hey, wait, can you get the listing up? But they should be working on it now. At the part where Gracie was into Miller, but Joe at the time wasn't, and that later on changed, what was intentional? Was that intentional how Joe handled that? Not really taking Gracie's feelings into consideration, not judging. Yeah, so I love Joe, but I also feel like Joe is just kind of like oblivious to things that happen around her a lot of the time. So I don't think she does things meaning to be insensitive. I think it like literally does not occur to her. So that was definitely intentional. Oh yeah, we could talk about the marionettes. Let's talk about the marionettes. If you guys have any questions about it, feel free to ask. I just don't know how much I can tell you. Question you would already answer. When did you know you wanted to write Joe's story? I originally started writing this book with no intention of publishing it after the roller coaster that was my first book release back in June. I just felt like very discouraged about writing and everything. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna write a book for fun, no pressure. I loved Joe's character. I thought this would be a fun project. So I originally wrote it thinking it would just be for me and no one else was gonna see it. That's just kind of how the book started. And then I ended up loving the book and showed it to some beta readers and they loved it too. So I decided to publish it. Have you managed to create a book cover for your third poetry book, or are you going to wait until you finish the book and pick a cover for it? So I'm using the same cover designer who has designed my previous 2 poetry collections. So she and I have been talking. I told her like I'm not going to have the final page count for a while, so I won't know the spine. But I've given her the title, and we've talked about it. So she's going to get started on the front cover for me relatively soon. I'm not in a hurry because I'm not going to publish it for a while, but that is something that's happening right now. Also, when changing it from first person, like the Anti-Virginity Pact. That's funny. Yeah, the first book was written in first person. This one's written in third person. And I wish I had like a really smart writer answer for why I did that. I have no idea. I'll just sit down and start writing a book, and whatever tense it's in, whatever point of view it's in, is what I end up sticking with for the book. So when I sat down to write the Anti-Virginity Pact, it was first person. When I sat down to write this one, it was third person. When I sat down to write the marionettes, it's first person again. So it's never intentional. It's just kind of like a gut feeling and what feels natural for the book. And for whatever reason, third person felt natural for this book. I always wonder what it looks like from the videos. It looks very cozy. Well, I'm glad you feel that way. I'm actually thinking about moving in the nearish future, so maybe I'll do a tour when I'm on my way out. Question, but what does editing poetry look like? What things do you look for? So there's like 2 different kinds of editing for me, like editing the poetry collection in terms of organization, like how many parts am I going to split this into, like what are the themes for each part, how does it all go together? And then there's also like the line level, making sure there's no typos, am I going to use punctuation, and then whatever choices I use for punctuation, making sure it's consistent throughout the whole thing. So there's like the grand scale, organizational, what order are the poems going to go in, what sections do I want within the collection, and then like actually cleaning up the text and how does this, I read them all aloud to see how it sounds when you read it and make sure there's not like repeating words or things that just like sound awkward. How has the feedback been better to this book than the Anti-Virginity Pact? It still deals with difficult issues, but I think both books handled them well. The feedback with the Anti-Virginity Pact, I had a lot of people. There's a video about it on my blog channel. I had a lot of people reaching out to me through my emails, through my DMs, who were essentially harassing me about painting religion in a negative light. And so I had a lot of super religious people very angry with me. So when I talk about the Anti-Virginity Pact, I don't mean like the book got negative reviews. I mean like people were literally like threatening me and harassing me online. So that hasn't happened with this book. So that's why it feels very different for me. Yeah, there's a Facebook group. Okay, so going back to people wanting to talk about the marionettes, I made a Facebook group, which I don't really use Facebook. I haven't in a while, and I don't really know a lot about Facebook groups, but I know a lot of other authors do that, where they make basically like a reader group for their book series. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to have a group for the Marionette series. So there's a link down below in the description if you want to join. I just made it, so it's new. I need to like update it and everything, but I thought it'd be fun to have like a little reader group. I'll post updates on the series in there. You can just chat with other readers, and once I figure out more about what you can do in Facebook groups, we'll do other stuff. But I thought it would just be cool to have a group for the series. And it's not like about me and all of my publishing stuff. It'll like literally be about the books and the content of the books and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a Facebook group down in the description for the Marionettes if you want to join it. Will you ever move to a big city like New York City? That was actually my original plan when I graduated college, and then just decided against it. Now that I have like all of this space, I have my 2 bedrooms, I have an office in my home, like the idea of paying even more in rent than I am right now for even less space, I just don't know if I could do it. Were you nervous about reactions to the second book? What were you worried about, insecure about, if that ever happened? Just with like how people reacted to the subject matter in the Anti-Virginity Pact, and with our general political climate right now and everything that's going on with abortion, I felt like if I was going to get any flack for this book, it would be about that. And I haven't yet. So I was kind of preparing myself for people to be angry with me on that topic, but I have not gotten nearly as passionate of a response as I did last time. What do you think is Joanna's worst personality trait? The worst one? I think she's just impulsive, and I think she cares about people, and I think she cares about other people's feelings, but it's just like delayed. Like she'll realize after the fact, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Oh, maybe I should have taken that into consideration. So I think she's just too impulsive. Great, thanks for joining the group. I'm like, I think I said in a recent vlog, I was hoping to get some character art made and stuff, so I'll share that in the group when I have it. I'll show you guys the cover before anyone else, just like stuff like that. Remember, after reading the book, I had a dream I had to fly to the US to help you with something, and we ate caramel together. It's so random. That is so random. I do like caramel though, so that's funny. All right, let's see. Did I skip any of the comments? I think we got through everything. Oh yeah, so if you wanted to know about the Marionettes, like I said, we have that Facebook group down below now. I'm almost done editing book 1. I actually made this, it's kind of ugly, but it's functional little spread in my reading journal. So we have the Marionettes, and we have all of the chapters, and I'm coloring in a chapter as I like finalize the edits. I'm going backwards. So once I finish this draft on my own, I'm going to send it to a few beta readers, one who read an earlier draft and maybe a few new ones. But then other than that, this first book should be done. Yeah, and I'm currently writing book 2. I'm about 35,000 words into book 2. And I've been talking about wanting to do a rapid release with these books. So I'm not going to be publishing the first one until I'm done with the second one. I decided I only want to rapid release the first 2 instead of the first 3 now. So once I have both first 2 books done is when they'll start coming out. But based on how book 1 ends on like a pretty big cliffhanger, I want book 2 to come out relatively soon after that. Like I don't want to give it to you right away, but I don't want to make you wait too long after that cliffhanger. So we're almost done with book 1. We're not quite halfway through the rough draft of book 2. Book 2 is going to be a lot longer. Sorry, I keep getting lost in these comments. Where were we? Oh, how is Max and Dean? They weren't here with me. I don't know where they went. They're good. They have started this new thing where they've found out how to open the drawers in my dresser. And at first I thought I was just being forgetful and kept forgetting to close the drawers. And then I was finding clothes all over the floor. And I was like, why would I have tossed all of these clothes on the floor? They're opening the drawers and digging out all of my clothes and then going and laying in the drawers. So every single day I have to clean up my clothes out of the drawers. Every single day I have to close the drawers and make sure they're not in there so they don't get squished. It's their new thing. They keep wanting to be inside my dresser and it's driving me crazy. But other than that, they're fine. What is the most difficult thing about writing male characters? Honestly, I just forget to include them half the time. That's something I end up having to fix. Usually after the rough draft, I'll have someone read it and they'll be like, this is great. You don't have like any male characters in this book. And I'll be like, you're right. I just like, men are irrelevant to me apparently. I just always forget to include them. I don't know why. And this is not a new thing for me. I remember being in a creative writing class, I think in 8th grade in middle school. And that was like the feedback that I got on the book, that there were no male characters in the book. I don't know why I always do this. I just forget to include them. That's probably not the answer you were looking for, but I don't know why that happens to me. Do you have critique partners, alpha readers, or just beta readers? I call them beta readers, but honestly, with the like level that some of them give me with their feedback, I kind of think of them more as critique partners. They're just not at a stage yet where they need my feedback on their writing. If they ever did and they gave me something to read, I would do the same for them. But I call them beta readers, but they give me like the level of critique that a critique partner would. And then I have some beta readers who do less, who are, I call them all beta readers. It's just like one term, but I kind of have a little bit of everything. Feeling gaslit by the cats. I think they just do it to mess with me. I think they see my reaction and they're like, this really gets a rise out of mom. Let's keep doing it. I would not object to a vlog of just cats. They are interesting, for sure. I have a harness and a leash now for Dean, so I'm trying to get him used to being on the harness, and I want to start taking him outside, but it keeps snowing here. So once we get some better weather, he and I are going to try and go outside some more. Definitely do the no male characters thing too. I'm glad it's not just me. I never realize it either until at least one draft is done, and then I go back and read. I'm like, it's always like an all-female cast, and then like the love interest, and that's it. I'm not from the US, I don't know. Are people really that mean to each other in college, how Joe's roommates were? I mean, everyone's experience is different. I've had a lot of fake friends over the years, so that's kind of where that came from. But I think a lot of other people have better experiences. Can you tell what it's about for those who might not know? What's about? This book? I hope you're not here if you don't know that, because then you just got spoiled for the whole book. I'm so glad you can make it for a little bit too. Welcome. Do you keep in contact with the cover designer that you ordered 4 book covers from? Are they the covers for the Marionette series? Yeah, so the cover designer, she is starting the Marionettes books next month. We are scheduled to start in May. So yeah, I'll let you guys know when I know more, but she's supposed to start on all 4 of those covers next month. I'm double checking to see if comments aren't loading, but I think we got to the end of the chat. Unless I missed anything. If I missed your question, it was not intentional. I accidentally skipped over it, so feel free to ask it again. My editor always rips apart the male love interests. I have a lot of work on the male characters. I'm trying to think. how the male characters that I like actually include end up turning out. I think I've gotten better at writing male characters than I used to be when I was younger, for sure. Was there a book or series inspiration for the marionettes? Um, yes. There's a lot of different things that inspire it. I mean, we've already kind of talked about this. I don't know how much I've told you though. I guess I'll just tell you, it's fine. So it's like a paranormal urban fantasy series, and I've always wanted to write some kind of paranormal book. So this series has literally everything that I love in it. We have like vampires, witches. It's very dark and gothic and gruesome and gory and bloody and fantastic. It's so much fun. So if I were to like, it's kind of like a mix up of like all of my favorite different kinds of vampires that I've come into contact with. So we've got like True Blood, and then also some like Alice in Wonderland, and it's a little bit Vampire Diaries-esque, and like basically just all of the things that I love put together. How are you doing since the release? Thanks for asking. It's been nice. Things have slowed down, less stressful. It's kind of hard being at like such a level of like I have so many things to do, I have so many things to juggle, and then once release hits and suddenly I have more free time. So it's just been kind of like disorienting, but it's nice. Can you talk about where the title for the marionettes came from, or will that spoil stuff? It would spoil stuff, but once you see the description of the book, you'll know why that's the title. I'll probably share the description relatively soon. I'm writing my first book and I'm the opposite. I'm struggling with the female characters. Interesting. What are you struggling with about them? I've had a ton of fake friends. It happens. I think once you have it happen a couple times, you start to learn, though. Will Marionettes be an adult book? Yes, it's definitely, I wouldn't even say it's new adult. It's just adult. Although our main characters are like 21, 22. But as far as like content goes, we got a lot of sexual content. We got a lot of violence. We got a lot of language. We got all the stuff. So definitely not young adult. I meant the marionettes. Oh, yeah, I haven't shared the description of the book yet, but like I said, hopefully soon. I think I might wait until I have the cover, and then I can share the cover and the blurb at the same time. Gothic and gruesome, honestly, the best. That's the tagline of the book. That's the best description of it. Gothic and gruesome. Can you tell us anything sneaky peeky about the marionettes? It sounds so good. Well, I'm glad you think it sounds good. Anything, I mean, what would be the most interesting tidbit for you guys to know? I don't know. Oh, hey, Lydia, this is one of my beta readers. The marionettes is so good. I read an early draft and I loved it. Your feedback was so funny. If you guys don't follow me on TikTok, I have a couple of TikToks with Lydia's feedback. You made that first round of revision so much better because I was laughing every time I saw your comments. Lydia, what do you think is a good sneak peek for the marionettes? Do you have a date, time you would like to release the marionettes? I'm very intrigued. It really just depends on how long it takes me to finish book 2. That's really what I'm writing on, because I spent a lot of time revising book 1 because it was so freaking short to begin with. It started out at 37,000 words was the rough draft, and now we're over 70K. So I'm really hoping I don't have the same experience now that I've figured out all of the world building and all of the basics, that book 2 will be easier to revise. So if I can revise book 2 in a timely manner, I would love to release it before the end of this year. So it really just depends on how long it takes me to get book 2 done. I feel like the thought flow and characteristics of the male seem more realistic. It's also harder for me with the female because I'm trying not to write the character like myself. Yeah, a lot of people have that issue with all of their characters coming out like themselves. Does that ever press you to write something original, or is that ever a concern? I think it's something that occurs to everyone who writes at some point, but nothing is original. And people will think your book is like whatever book they read first in that genre or with that trope. Like, people will say, this is just like this, when actually there were like 5 other books that were like that before this one came out, if that makes sense. And so people are just like always gonna find connections in whatever they experienced first. So trying to come up with something original is absolutely impossible. So I try not to focus on that. I just try to focus on writing a book that I would like to read. I know that's like the cliche, write the book you want to read, but truly my books are like what I would want to pick up on the shelf that's not there. Paranormal has me so excited. It's been so fun. It's been hard. I don't write fantasy. I don't write, especially like high fantasy. And this book has ended up being so much more fantasy than I originally thought. So I've been doing so much work on the world building. And it's not my strength because I'm the kind of reader where when I'm reading a fantasy book, all I care about is the romance in the book. Like I don't care about all of the world building and all of the politics and stuff. So as a writer, that's how I was writing it originally. Like I don't care about all of the world building because as a reader, I don't care. But then as I'm revising, I'm like, not everyone who's reading this is going to feel that way. You have to do the world building too. So I've been struggling to make it like fully fleshed out, but it's been fun. I'm so glad you guys are excited for it. I'm really, really excited for this book to be out. I think you guys will enjoy it, hopefully. Paranormal reads are my favorite. They're my favorite too. Does the blurb for each book come smoothly or do you battle a bit? Since I'm still battling with my blurb for my first fantasy book that I'm rewriting. Blurbs, I hate writing. They're so hard. They're so hard. So no, they usually come to me pretty quickly. Whether or not they're any good is up for debate, but I try my best. Just want to mention how incredibly grateful I am that you are here now on YouTube, Instagram, and Patreon. Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad that you enjoy them. Yeah, I really, really enjoy our little Patreon community. It's just a very welcoming little area. Well, it's so freaking hard. And it's like, you don't even know what you don't know until it comes up in the book. So I planned so much for this series and I did all of this work on the world building. And then when I started writing the book, I was like, I don't know anything. I did all of this work, but that was just like a drop in the barrel. There was still so much work to be done. And sometimes you don't even know what you don't know until you write a scene. And then you're like, there's so much context missing from this. So it was just this like constant, I was like digging myself further into a hole. The further I wrote into the book, there was just constantly new things coming up that I didn't know. And then I had beta readers come in and they were asking all of these questions. And I was like, oh yes, that is a very good question. I have no idea what the answer is. So it's been challenging, but it's been fun. I'm glad you can make it before the end. I hope you had a good day at work. What is your best tip to revising a poetry book? I sometimes find it hard to figure out if the poems need work or not. I would get a second opinion at that point. Specifically try to find people who read whatever type of poetry you like to write. But I mean, the thing that I look for in my own poetry book is probably different from what other poets look for. I really like to look for like the flow and how all of the poems work together. Like I said, reading out loud is really helpful for me when I'm editing poetry. And taking space from it sometimes, like I'll write a poem and I might love it in the moment and then I come back to it a month later and I'm like, actually this doesn't fit. Actually, I don't like this. So I think that's why poetry is such a slow process for me because I just like need to think about it for a long time. I guess, oh, this is what Lydia has to say about the Marionettes for your sneak peek. It's super dark and mysterious and sexy, but also funny and romantic. It's like all the good things about your classic paranormal phase, but like scaled up and for adults. I love it. It's better than any description I could give for it. That is a good point, actually. The mysteries in this first book, not necessarily in the whole series, but the first book is actually like very much centered around a couple of different mysteries. And there's a lot of twists in the book and you have to figure out like all of these things coming together. So that's my favorite part about the first book is the mysteries to it. I think it's a fun time. Someone described the anti-relationship years reading like a train. This first book in the Marionettes, I think, reads like a train. Tell us how many love interests it will have. So far there are 2. That might change later as well. But in book 1, there are 2. Will there be any forbidden romance in the Marionettes? If not, would you ever consider writing a romance with forbidden love? I love reading it. What is exactly the definition of forbidden love? I don't think I really read that trope much. I mean, obviously, like, the definition of the words forbidden love, but I don't really know what goes into that trope. I don't know if I would classify anything in this book as forbidden love. I don't really know. I don't really know how to classify the romance in this one. I'm glad that's helpful. Good luck on your poetry collection. You have to let me know when you're done. Do you want to experiment with love triangles, or is this something you hate? I'm not one of those people who's like, the book has a love triangle in it, I won't read it. I hate love triangles. I don't have a problem with love triangles if they're done well. I think they can be done really well. I think the problem is when we had that like wave of copycat YA books that were all trying to copy like Twilight and whatever, and how they all had love triangles, but for like no good reason. And it was just these guys pining after a main female character who had no personality. I think that's why people didn't like the love triangles. But I think when it's done well, it can be done well. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't know if I would classify what's in this book as a love triangle, though. I think people see, oh, there's two love interests, so naturally it's a love triangle. I don't think I would describe it that way, though. I will tell you, oh, this is something I can tell you. I made a TikTok about it, too, so it's not like it's a secret. The romance in The Marionettes is going to be very, like the overarching romance, it's going to be very slow burn, like agonizingly slow. And it's been so fun for me to write. So if you like that kind of thing, I think it'll be really fun. Something that you just know you shouldn't do, maybe. Yeah, I don't think I would really. Okay, so if we're talking like Penelope Douglas, yeah, I wouldn't say mine is similar at all. Would I ever do something like that? Probably. I don't know. I'm finding with every book that I write, I'm finding new genres that I didn't know that I would like to write. Like I never knew I would like writing romance, and now here we are. So I would try it. I don't know if I'd be any good at it. See, I love the slow burns, so I'm living for the romance in this series. It's been so much fun. I love the audiobook on your new book. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I think the narrator did a really good job. It's been so fun to have an audiobook. All right, we've been here for over an hour. Do we have any closing final questions? Just to recap, if you missed it, there's a link down below in the description if you want to pick up a signed copy of The Anti-Relationship Year before I release it to the masses. I'll probably send out that newsletter to my newsletter subscribers on Monday, so you have until then to get it before they probably swipe them up. I have a new Facebook group for the Marionettes that you can join if you want to. There's nothing in it yet, but I'm hoping we'll put some fun stuff in there in the near future. Oh yeah, and if you've read the book, which I'm hoping you have if you're still here, and if you haven't left a review yet, I would really, really appreciate it. We're at like 29 on Amazon, so if we could just get one more to get to the even number of 30, it would make me very happy. I really like whole numbers. So we just need like one more, and I'd really appreciate it. Slow burns make it so much more satisfying when they get together finally. That's exactly what I'm going for with this one, where it's going to be like all of the sexual tension and all of the buildup, and you're like waiting for it to happen, and then when it finally does, it's going to be so exciting. I swiped my signed copy during this live. I'm so glad you got one. I'm gonna package them all up probably tomorrow and send them out early next week, so you should get them hopefully nice and soon. And I'm gonna throw in some free bookmarks and stuff, so you should get lots of fun stuff in your package. But yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with me and chatting about the book today. This has been fun. I didn't know if anyone would show up, so thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for reading the book so quickly. I know I didn't even give you guys like a month to read it, so if this was a good amount of time, let me know. Maybe next time we could put more space between the release and the live, whatever you guys think. But I thought this would be more fun, where we could actually talk about the book rather than doing the live show on release day, because at that point the only people who can like really talk about the book are the ARC readers, and then everyone else is just like, I ordered it, I don't have it yet. Okay, good. It was a good amount of time. I felt like a month was like decent, especially because this was like a shorter book. This is definitely the shortest of my books. This was so fun. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm glad you had a good time. So yeah, all of those links are down below in the description. And I think that's going to be it for today, guys. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you have a great rest of your Saturday and the great rest of your weekend. Thanks for reading. Thanks for being here. I don't have any videos currently in the work, but hopefully we'll have something up again soon. Thanks for being here, guys. I really enjoyed hanging out with you for a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go find my cats, probably in my dresser. But I'll talk to you guys again soon. Have a great rest of your weekend.